What's going on YouTube? It's Tej, back again with another video, and today I'm giving you third-year NFL breakout candidates. So we're taking a look back at the class of 2021. I'm going to give you 15 names that, based off their situation or the talent that I think they have, are going to have a breakout season. So we're going to go position group by position group. I want to hear your thoughts and some early breakout candidates down below in the comments section. Maybe there's a name I have on this list that you're saying, yep, I think you're spot on, this is going to be his breakout year. Or maybe there's someone I left off that you're saying, TJ, come on, how did you pass on him? He's going to have a crazy year. I want to hear all those hot takes and predictions down below in the comments section. But hopefully you all enjoy. Hit that like button if you do, and subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more football content like this. So I also have to start, like, this 2021 class is probably my favorite class I've ever scouted. Like, 2018 holds a special place in my heart because I'm just like the president of the Josh Allen fan club, and that's been one of my bigger draft hits. I got a lot of pushback on that at the time, but obviously he's become one of the best QBs in the league. But legitimately, just talking about like talent on a class, the 2021 class was bananas. Like, you get to Rashawn Slater at 13, Micah Parsons goes, 11? Devonta Smith, or maybe Parsons was 12, Smith was 11. I mean, it's insane. You legitimately got to the middle of the first round. QB misses aside, because, we'll see how those end up playing out, including this first guy we're going to talk about, Justin Fields. But, like, the non-QBs, we're going in the middle of the first round of just legit stud after stud after stud. So I was super excited about this group going into the 2021 draft. And even in retrospect, it's like, wow, that class was seriously something special. So hopefully we're going to add some more special names to that list. And we're going to start with an obvious one, Justin Fields. I'll be pretty quick here. I mean, the last couple of years, we've been making the excuses. It's the scheme, right? Like Matt Nagy, his rookie year wasn't doing anything to help. And then it's, the situation around him. The offensive line's not great. The wide receiver room is underdeveloped. Well, now we're going into year 3, and one, I think Fields has made strides as a passer. I think he has grown. I think this is the year where it kind of comes together. Second year in the Luke Getsy offense as the former QB coach at Green Bay. Last year was the first year in the offense. Now he's second year in the system. He'll feel comfortable. He'll have a better understanding of the reads, the checks, and all that sort of stuff at the line of scrimmage. And now he's got a bona fide number 1 wide receiver in DJ Moore. They draft on right at pick number 10. So now he slots in at right tackle. You're building off Braxton Jones, who I think was impressive as a first-year starter and a 5th-round rookie. Like, that's impressive in and of itself. They signed Nate Davis. I'm looking at a situation where he should be more comfortable in the offense. He's got a better wide receiver room now, not only with DJ Moore, but also Chase Claypool's second year. He played half a year basically in Chicago in that offense. Now he should be better going into his first full season. And Darnell Mooney's still there. And also, let's free Cole Kmet. Let's see what the former Notre Dame tight end can actually do in this offense. But also, that offensive line has now come together. Like, if Justin Fields doesn't work out, there's no longer really an excuse. And he was the number 3 player on my big board in 2021. So I believe in the talent. And now that those excuses are aside, I think the season where we see Justin Fields go from an electric player with the ball in his hands to that type of threat with a howitzer for an arm, plenty of accuracy. We just need to see the decision-making and the processing speed up, and I think this is the year where all that kind of comes together. All right, so talking about running backs, Javonte Williams is kind of like a duh name because, like, what we got to see before the injury, the dude's just special. And he was my running back 2 in this year's, the 2021 class, right behind Najee Harris. And really that class, 1 through 3, you could have told me an argument, one's 1A, one's 1B, one's 1C. With, Travis Etienne being that third guy in the mix. I know some people who had Etienne as RB1. And Williams made a strong push to be my RB1 the more and more I watched him, compared him to Najee Harris. He's just so much more explosive, right? Like that quick twitch burst, but also more long speed to be able to break off a 15-yard run where Najee kind of feels like he's capped at like a 10-yard scamper. So yeah, I just love the dynamism, the ability to win with long speed, quickness, agility, set a PFF record for forced missed tackle per like rep, which is insane. It was like 0.4, which is he's almost breaking half the tackle every time he touches the ball. Are you kidding me? That's insane. I mean, that translates to the NFL level. Also think he's a pretty good pass catcher. Plus, we just got the report and the quote from Javonte Williams saying that he feels like he's going to be ready to go by training camp. So they bring in Samaje Perine, which is good, which means, like in the day and age where I think like a clear-cut bell cow running back doesn't exist anymore, I feel confident about Javonte Williams being the headline name in a committee, especially if he stays healthy and we get to the back half of this upcoming season. Weeks 9 through 17, 9 through 18, I want to see Javonte Williams as the headline name in that committee. Still giving touches to Perine and the other guys there in the mix, but I want to see Williams leading the way. He's got all the talent in the world to have this be his breakout season. All right, then we get to Elijah Moore, and I liked him a ton coming out of Ole Miss. I was a little bit more of a Kadarius Toney guy than I was an Elijah Moore guy, but nonetheless, I thought both were worthy of being in the first round conversation, and ultimately one goes in the first round, one goes in the second pick of the second round, so wasn't too far off in that estimation. But he's just living a situation where he was not happy. The offense wasn't working for him. And him and Zach Wilson weren't clicking, right? Like there were so many quotes this time during the Jets where it's just like, I'm open, I'm just not getting the ball. And something about him and Zach Wilson it just didn't come together. But I think he's this really interesting blend of a field stretching slot, but a great yak player. I actually think he could even do some work on the outside. But assuming in Cleveland he's going to play on the inside and in the slot, I think it's a great spot for him. He is a more dynamic version of Jarvis Landry. Now, I'm not saying he's as polished route runner of Jarvis Landry. Really, these guys win him more in just vastly different ways. But he is a wide receiver this team just doesn't have right now, where Cooper is this guy who wins. He's kind of a jack of all trades. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones is this, vertical field stretching guy. Moore is kind of the yak weapon they don't have. He's a different type of, field stretcher. DPJ is going to win in contested catch spots. I think Moore is just a more legit burner than him. So he's just the wide receiver skill set they didn't have. And I just think he's in an offense where we already got two guys playing on the outside. So as much as we think Elijah Moore can play out wide, we're going to play in the slot and give him some more, hopefully, advantageous matchups. Also just refound belief, hopefully, in himself. I never really thought he lost belief in himself, but he's going from an organization that was struggling to put him on the field and get him the ball to now one that made a trade for him, so they are going to prioritize him playing and him getting the ball. And also, like Zach Wilson versus Deshaun Watson, off the field stuff aside, Watson's a better football player. And even if it's like what we saw last year, that is a better version of Deshaun Watson because he's not going to get benched for a CFL player on a Thursday night game. Shout out to that Jets-Jags game I had to bear through and watch. So, yeah, I just think the situation entirely has improved for Elijah Moore. And I mean, you got a clear-cut one in Amari Cooper, so it's not even like you're giving him the hardest assignment. It's not like he's seeing a team's number one corner. Moore's just going to have to, showcase why I thought he should have been a first-round wide receiver or why he was in that conversation. Great yak skills, great long speed, and I think we just haven't really seen the best of Elijah Moore unlocked given his situation in New York. Cleveland, they have the chance to change that. All right, moving on now to another wide receiver, Terrace Marshall Jr., was a really good player in college. Last year, we got to see him move out wide, played more than 90% of his snaps on the outside, has that prototypical build at like 6'2", 215 pounds. So he has the looking of being a number one kind of X wide receiver. We just haven't really seen it all come together. His PFF grades across the board, overall grade, route running, all that sort of stuff did go up in year two, which is a good sign. He just hasn't had the role really carved out for him, kind of same problem with Elijah Moore. He had the likes of Sam Darnold throwing him. PJ Walker. No disrespect, Walker had a good game there against Atlanta, but ultimately, it was a one-game wonder. And off of that as well, DJ Moore. DJ Moore was there, so in a pinch, those two guys, Darnold and PJ Walker, their target share to DJ Moore was through the roof. So Terrace Marshall Jr. just didn't really have those opportunities. Right now, there's an argument to say week one, he's their number one guy, right? Like Thielen's getting up there in age, and I think to me he's washed. Jonathan Mingo, rookie, no guarantee that week one he is ready to be that number one guy. So it might ultimately be Terrace Marshall Jr. And now with the opportunity and an upgrading QB play, all those things kind of signal to me that he should have a better season. So hopefully this is the Terrace Marshall Jr. breakout year. One more wide receiver, Rashod Bateman, and I've had him on breakout list last year as well, so I won't go too long, but it all makes sense. You get OBJ in the building, you draft Zay Flowers, it's not just Rashod Bateman and who else. He is going to have defenses respecting what OBJ can do, what Zay Flowers can do, and because of that, the assignment for Bateman should be easier. Additionally, hopefully this year we get a fully healthy Lamar Jackson for a full season. And also Bateman coming off injury, so he missed a majority of last year as well, so who knows what last year could have entailed for him. But assuming he's healthy and Lamar's healthy, all the excitement I had last year, I still have going into this season, but now the situation is even better, and he's got two more guys around him. Also a change in offense coordinator. No disrespect to Greg Roman. He has made it to a Super Bowl. That's one more Super Bowl than I've reached as an offensive coordinator. And he got Lamar Jackson as an MVP, a unanimous MVP for that matter, as his OC. More than I can say. But I think we saw the ceiling with Greg Roman. And honestly, the strength of the Roman offense is not how he draws it up in the passing game. Todd Monken, I feel a little bit better about. Like, you see the jump that Stetson Bennett made from 2 years ago at Georgia when they won, the national championship to last year when they won the national championship. The dude looked night and day way better. And I think Todd Monken had a hand to play in that. So I'm excited to see what he does to open up that passing attack and make that offense that much more dynamic and that much more well-rounded. I think Bateman could be one of the beneficiaries of that. Then we get to the offensive line. Brady Christense, year one to year two, some improvement across the board when his PFF grades, overall run blocking, pass blocking, which is a good sign. And they are pretty good at being able to evaluate that no matter what you think about PFF as an organization. And also it's just, year three. Young offensive lineman that I liked at BYU, the shift inside the guard kind of made sense, and ultimately I think he might be better long-term because of it. And year 3 is typically when we see that jump from offensive linemen, whether it's, tackles, guards, centers, whatever. Sometimes those first 2 years are just, you're kind of getting beat up on. And sometimes you make a year 2 leap like Andrew Thomas, and sometimes it comes in year 4, like some guys across the league. But more often than not, it feels like it's that year 3-4 window. So because of that, I'm looking at Brady Christense, already improved in year 2, became a solid, capable starter. I think year 3 is when he gets even better. And plus, he's playing next to Bradley Bozeman, who I think is a really solid center. And on the left of him is Ikem Ekwonu, who got better and better week over week last year in Carolina. And I think it's on the verge of becoming a superstar tackle. So he's playing between 2 really solid guys, which I think only makes him that much better. All right, next offensive lineman, Walker Little. Tricky one here because obviously the Jags draft Anton Harrison. And Cam Robinson suspended, but it's only 4 games. So if Little struggles for those first 4 weeks, I could see a world where it's like, hey, Cam Robinson's back off suspension, he's playing right tackle, or we're going to flip Anton Harrison. Or if Walker Little plays really well and Anton Harrison hits the ground running, like I could see a world where they're like, hey, we're paying Cam Robinson some good money, but we'll stick with the hot hands right now. The 2 young guys are out playing Cam Robinson, or we'll find a way to move Little inside the guard, or Harrison, or however that situation plays out. I really don't know what direction Jacksonville has as planned as their contingency if the 2 young guys end up playing well. But Walker Little to me was a guy who had the talent to be a first rounder coming out of Stanford. He just missed way too many games during his college career, and you just didn't know what you were getting health-wise. And at the NFL level, it hasn't been spectacular. I don't think it's been bad either. It's just too small of a sample size to really glean and tell what Walker Little's going to be. So we're going to find out. First 4 games of the year, which is also tough because you don't want to just pin everything you think you know about a guy on 4 games because, again, small sample size, and especially when it's the first 4 games of the year. There have been plenty of guys who got off to bad starts and turned around big time by week 5. You know what I'm saying? So it's again, a little tricky to judge, but I believe in the talent that Walker Little has. Now we're going into year 3, so again, anticipating that jump for it, rookie contract offensive lineman. And I kind of thought talent-wise he was a first-rounder. So now I'm going to buy into that. And assuming he doesn't get hurt in those first 4 games, I think this could be a guy that we're talking about as like the Jags. Okay, Walker Little, we know that good selection. That paid off big time. And then we're figuring out what Anton Harrison is. And if they both work out, what do you do then with Cam Robinson? Maybe you trade him before the deadline. That could be another possibility here. But I don't know what the Jags have planned there, but I do know I'm excited to see Walker Little here in year 3. And then we get to Christian Barmor, interior defensive lineman, who was really good last year as a pass rusher, but only played about 550 snaps. So I think this year we'll see a slightly bigger workload and even better pass rusher. Like last year, he was a pretty good pass rusher. I think this could be the year where he takes a step forward towards that. Like he may not play 900 snaps or whatever, but like just what you get production on a per snap basis as good as someone like a Jeffrey Simmons, maybe even a Chris Jones, that type of level. A Christian Wilkins maybe is a better comp or something like that. Or again, I'm not saying he's going to become Aaron Donald or the best defensive player in the league, but what you get on those 550, 600, maybe 650 snaps could be so good, specifically as a pass rusher, where you're like, you have to talk about him as one of these, another name in the list really of up-and-coming young interior defensive linemen with the likes of Simmons and Wilkins and Lawrence and all those guys. And hopefully we see some growth as a run defender too. Because that's the other area that I think he can grow. And part of the reason I say that is he's just not a very good run defender. So the floor is, the bar is really easy to pass there. So if he becomes, marginally better against the run and just kind of becomes an average-ish run defender and someone you can play a little bit more on early downs, then we're talking about him having a bigger role, getting more snaps, and then hopefully just the continuation of his career and his growth as a pass rusher, which he's on the path to doing. And that's what his calling card was at Alabama. The dude was just a freaky interior pass rusher. And assuming that growth continues, I already think he's going to be a really, really awesome passing down situation. This guy is going to be a problem from guards and centers perspective. So I already think he's going to be a really, really good pass rusher, going from good to really special to great. Solely from that perspective. And there's so much room for him to grow as a run defender that I'm holding out hope that he gets to average-ish. If he becomes an okay-ish run defender, we're talking about a big-time breakout season for Christian Barmor. And then Alim McNeill, another interior defensive lineman who had some games last year, man. There was one game, I can't remember who it was against off the top of my head, but had 10-plus pressures, and it's like, okay, this is the Alim McNeill I kind of thought we'd see at NC State, who, the Wolfpack at the time were using a ton of 3-3-5 sets, so he's getting double-team play in to play out. So I was like, man, Detroit, they draft him, Levi Onwuzurike in the same draft, but I don't know, I kind of like them both, and I like Alim McNeill maybe a little bit more, just now he's going to see 4-man fronts. He's going to get double-teamed less. And I think last year we really saw him kind of take advantage of those one-on-ones, get that much better with his hands, and he's a pretty good athlete given his size, and he's still playing on a defensive line that's got, James Houston going into year 2. Aiden Hutchinson going into year 2. So he's got a good supporting cast around him that, like, Alim McNeill is not the focal point, not the number one name you're trying to stop if you're an opposing offense. And he's also a pretty solid run defender, too. Like, I think basically this upcoming season, we'll get to see a little bit more, hopefully a little bit more snaps played, and we'll see him just go from good run defender to a plus level run defender, pretty good run defender, close to, I don't want to call it elite, but close to Pro Bowl level run defender. Not that Pro Bowls really matter that much, but hopefully it illustrates the point I'm trying to get at. And then we see that pass rush more consistently. Just instead of like, oh, Alim McNeill had a big game here. Oh my God, it's been 3 weeks and Alim McNeill just went crazy again. Hopefully we start to see it a little bit more consistently. And who knows, this defensive line might become him and Hutchinson as the 1-2 punch. That really wouldn't surprise me, which I know a lot of Lions fans are like, no, it's Houston and Hutchinson. But I don't know. Don't sleep on Alim McNeill. I'm a big-time believer in his game. I think year 3 could be the year where he does take that step forward, becomes above average at both run stopping and pass rushing, and kind of works himself in that conversation. Hey, this is me and Aiden Hutchinson's defensive line. All right, next edge rusher to talk about. We got 2 to talk about that I'm really, really excited about, and both playing in the state of Florida, which I did not necessarily do on purpose. But Tryon-Shoyin, I've been saying this for a little bit. I think year 3, this is going to be his breakout season. A guy who opted out in 2020 because of COVID, transformed his body, and got himself into fantastic shape. And his rookie year, got out to maybe a little hot start preseason week 1. It was like, oh, whoa, Tryon-Shoyin, oh, God, that athleticism definitely plays. And then he got it kind of figured out, had to develop more as a legitimate pass rusher, put together a pass rush game plan, and learn how to play the game of chess one-on-one against the tackle. And then last year, we kind of saw that bear fruit. By the back half last year, it's like, all right, he's starting to figure it out as solely from a pass rush perspective on top of his freaky athleticism. So another offseason, I think this is when he puts it all together. And we see him take that massive step forward where it's like, this guy's a legitimate pass rusher with awesome athleticism. And I think it's going to be kind of a handing of the torch situation where we once looked at the Bucs defense and we saw Shaq Barrett as the guy, the edge rusher you had to worry about, to where it becomes Tryon-Shoyin. Because again, the frame, it's there. The athleticism, it's there. And the growth as a player, it's on its way. And I think year 3 is when we finally see it all come together. And it's kind of similar to, actually, I got 2 more edge rushers to talk about. Jaelan Phillips is what we're going to talk about next. But Payton Turner, on a similar-ish note, frame, athleticism, it's there. Payton Turner's a little different. We just haven't seen him play that much. He's got like a combined 350 snaps for his first 2 years in the league. So, injuries play a part in that. The role itself, playing behind some other, just right now better players, also, kept him off the field. But this is his season, right? Like, Marcus Davenport's not there anymore. Like, it's his presumed starting job. Him and Isaiah Foskey, I would assume, are battling for that starting edge spot opposite of Cam Jordan. And even if Turner, let's just say, doesn't win that starting job, he's going to be the third edge rusher rotating in for Foskey, rotating in for Cam Jordan. So he's got a massive role ahead of him this upcoming season. And obviously, former first-round pick. The Saints want this to work. This is a pick they want to see hit his stride and play like a first-rounder. So that way they can say, yep, see, we drafted him in the first round. It's a surprising pick at the time, but we were right. Every organization wants that. So they're going to give him every opportunity. He's going to see the field a lot, assuming he's healthy. We're just going to see, what, 6'6", 260, 270, and that freaky athleticism coming out of, Houston, what it all comes together and looks like for Payton Turner. But he was a guy that I liked for a lot of reasons, but to me it was kind of a draft and stash. If I could get him the second round, develop him, kind of use him as a DPR initially, and then maybe by year 3 he can become a starter. And it hasn't really played out that way in New Orleans, but that's kind of how I view Turner, and it's almost what we have, right? Like, he barely played those first 2 years, so he wasn't really used as a DPR. But he was this raw prospect with a lot of things I like from a body and athleticism standpoint that if you give him some time, he might become a really solid starter. So now we're going to get to see. Wish you could have gotten the experience in the DPR role so that way we could have seen him on the field and had him learn through experience. But now it's time to put up or shut up, and we're going to get to see what that former first-rounder is all about in Payton Turner. And speaking of former first-rounders, Jaelan Phillips was like the 15th overall pick, and he was my number 1 edge in the 2021 class. Former 5-star recruit, was forced to retire at UCLA because of the concussions, bounces back, goes to Miami, then gets drafted by Miami. And last year, post-Bradley Chubb trade, we saw Phillips kick it in a high gear. And maybe it just took having another guy that defenses had to respect. But if that's the case, plus, Christian Wilkins going from like an emerging interior defensive lineman to a guy I think that has arrived and has put himself in that conversation for one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL, that type of conversation, that type of step forward from Wilkins, maybe all that amounted to Phillips having an easier assignment. But I also think he just got more confident using his hands. We really saw the athleticism and the burst off the line of scrimmage really come to play. And when I say a breakout season for Jaelan Phillips, I'm not saying he's going to become like prime Khalil Mack, prime Nick Bosa or anything like that. Like, I'm not saying he's going to become like the best edge rusher in football, not by that means, but he could become Bradley Chubb level, where we're talking about him as like, he's probably, the 10th best edge rusher in the NFL, maybe 12th, or, maybe he's 9th on this given year, or 8th, whatever. I could see him work himself in that conversation this upcoming season. And so, again, certainly helps having Christian Wilkins, Manuel Ogbah, and, Bradley Chubb on that defensive line. And plus, it'll help having Vic Fangio there. I think that defense all in all to be better. Plus, Jalen Ramsey makes the coverage side that much better, forcing QBs to hold on the ball. Phillips will benefit from that. And he's one of my favorite, preseason prop bets. Actually, the PFF forecast is talking about it. His prop line right now is at 7.5. I like the over there. And he's kind of a sneaky defensive player of the year type of candidate if the Dolphins are really, really good and live up to their full potential. But even just getting away from the absolute ceiling that maybe Jaelan Phillips could have this upcoming season, I think what we saw the back half of last year is a pretty safe floor of what we can expect going into this year on a full season basis, which is a really awesome pass rusher, a great number 2 to Bradley Chubb, if not maybe playing on the same level as Bradley Chubb. And that's kind of where I got my sights set for Jaelan Phillips. And again, going back to 2021, talent wasn't the issue, and if not for him retiring because of a concussion, I think Jaelan Phillips ends up being in that top 10 conversation. As I said at the top of the video, the 2021 draft class was loaded. It's insane. You legitimately get to the middle of the first round before you stop hitting stud after stud after stud. But if not for the concussion concerns and the forced retirement at UCLA, I think Phillips might have been drafted even higher, which I think speaks to how much talent the dude has. Then we get to the linebacker position, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think a lot of people look at Joke as like a good player, and they're like, yeah, Joke, he's good. Like, he's a really rangy athlete, a little small, but can shoot gaps, good tackler, great coverage specialist. Yeah, I think all that's true, but he's just coming off a down year, and he's battled a lot of injuries. So I'm kind of anticipating we get 17 games out of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. The Browns are playoff competitive, and he's a big reason why. Also, I think it helps having Jim Schwartz come over. I actually think that gives you a more stable, more consistent hand as a play caller versus Joe Woods, where some weeks the Browns defense looked legit and some weeks they looked far from it. So I think that brings out a lot more consistency for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And plus, he's playing next to Anthony Walker, who's good, not great. Like, I could definitely see a world where he easily stands out as like the best linebacker on this team, where maybe there's okay around him, but he is the star of the mix, which certainly, it's almost like the hall pass joke where, if you're not that good looking, you surround yourself with people who are less good looking and makes you look that much better. Weird analogy to use, but it kind of does make me feel like that could be the case here for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, comparing him to like an Anthony Walker Jr. who's solid and a Sione Takitaki who's fine, I guess. But kind of getting back on track here, especially from a coverage perspective, if the Browns are playing big games and they are playoff competitive, there's going to be a lot of close games. There's going to be big moments where teams are, the game's decided through the air, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah could definitely be the guy who comes up with those big time plays. And you go back to his rookie year, he was awesome in coverage. So as long as he's healthy and gets back to more what we saw on field year 1 versus year 2, I think he's going to have a lot of big plays. And if the Browns are playoff competitive, there's going to be a decent amount of eyes on them. Therefore, putting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah into breakout spotlights. Then we get to the next linebacker, Jamin Davis. I might regret doing this. I seriously might. But, he's a guy at Kentucky that, freaky athlete, awesome build, kind of built in a lab to play linebacker. I'm excited he goes to Washington because, Ron Rivera, former linebacker, Jack Del Rio, former linebacker. Here we go. They're going to work their magic with Jamin Davis. And apparently he was their number 1 defensive player on the board. And look back at the 2021 defensive class. Pat Surtain, J.C. Horn, Micah Parsons, Jaelan Phillips. And they had Jamin Davis at 1. Is that a scouting error, or do they have that much belief in him? I would have to call it a scouting error to this point, but at the same time, a guy who got better week over week at Kentucky and has all the physical tools and assets you would want to be a starting linebacker. And he plays the hardest position in the league to play right now. It's hard to play offensive line. It takes 3 years sometimes to get those guys to break out. I think the same is going to end up becoming true about linebacker, where it's like RPOs are basically just or designed to put linebackers in a blender where every decision they make is wrong. And just even like the yak changed the game. Yeah, 2 high coverages. We're going to make the assignment a little easier for our secondary, where they're playing soft, they're playing more conservative, not letting big plays happen in front of them. But that means the middle of the field is getting targeted more, and these linebackers are having to play more coverage, match up against tight end slot receivers, and be responsible for tackling these guys in those underneath throws. So it's just kind of the least glorifying position in the league to play right now. So I kind of feel like that's part of the reason why Jamin Davis is kind of a punching bag as like a first-round flop, so to speak. But also like year 2, rookie year PFF grades were really bad, but his year 2 grades were slightly better. They still weren't very good, but they were better. And that's a step in the right direction. So now I'm still kind of pinning my hope to Rivera and Del Rio saw something. And they're former NFL linebackers. They have to be able to get this out of him. And if it doesn't come together in year 3, then yeah, I think it's fair to call him a bust and a flop of a pick and a massive disappointment. And we'll look back at that Washington board and say Davis was your number 1 defensive player over Parsons and Surtain and Horn and Phillips and yada, yada, yada. What? And we'll see after this year. Maybe all that's, fair to criticize. But I'm not going to give up hope that it all comes together. Again, freaky athlete, has the build. Just going to really come down to some coaching, too. So I really do hope that that coaching staff can kind of have it all come together for Jamin Davis. Last name to talk about here is Javon Merrick. That year, Merrick was my number 1 safety, but where a lot of people were saying Merrick is a clear-cut safety 1 and, Javon Holland is maybe safety 2, Richie Grant maybe is your safety 2. To me, it was like 1A, 1B. I got Merrick at 1A and Holland at 1B, and I kind of regret backing down for my way too early position rankings, having Holland at 1, because obviously he's been the better player so far. But Merrick, man, can play free. He can play nickel. He can play strong. I'm assuming he's going to mostly play free safety with Marcus Epps coming over from Philadelphia, but he also played a fair amount of free safety. The other component to take into here is it's his second year in that Patrick Graham defense, and Patrick Graham's defense is very complicated. They play a very even balance of cover 4, cover 3, man, single high man, cover 2 man. Like, they mix it up across the board, making it very hard for a safety because playing and play out, your assignment could be completely different than what it was, the play before. So, I feel like it's a tricky position for him to be in, and probably took a year to kind of get a full understanding of what he should be and what his assignment should be playing and play out. So year 2, I think we're going to really see the benefits of him playing with a really good defensive coordinator, being hopefully put in the right spots. It's going to take Patrick Graham calling good games and taking advantage of the talent that Merrick has and putting him in those right positions. But assuming Graham does his job, I think Merrick's in a better spot to do his. And I don't think talent's the problem here. Good speed, good closing speed on top of that, not only long speed, but closing speed. Good coverage ability, both man and zone, really sure tackler. And again, you can line him up all over the field. And TCU did exactly that. So I think this is a guy that in a multiple defense can play multiple roles. And I just think now that he's a little more comfortable in that defense and has a better feel for what Patrick Graham's going to call playing and play out too, that makes him that much better and that much more likely to have a breakout year 3. But guys, that is going to do it for my third-year NFL breakout candidates list. Let me hear your thoughts on this 2021 class and who might break out going into year 3, whether it's quarterbacks, receivers, offense, defense, you name it. Or if you want to talk about some of the names on my list and why you think they won't break out, that's a different but interesting conversation in itself. Let me hear all your thoughts. And maybe if there is a name you feel like I left off, let me hear that name dropped down below as well. But hopefully you all enjoyed. Hit the like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more football content like this. Be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Until next time, my name is Teach, and I'm signing off.